All right, what's up, guys? Back for a second day in a row. Chuck and Chris doing a Best Ball Mania stream live on Underdog Fantasy. Chris, how we doing today? How we any feeling any different from yesterday?
Feeling pretty good about the team I put together on last night's show. I'd love to see you match the accomplishment and put together one we can feel great about. But yeah, same old. It hasn't been too long since we last chatted. Didn't really get any earth-shattering NFL news within the last 24 hours for us to react to, but that's okay. Have plenty of players to still talk about that we haven't hit on. You mentioned on yesterday's show there were like 7 guys you wanted to talk about we couldn't even get to. So we absolutely will be able to do that here tonight. So you'll drive. I'll try to keep the show on the rails here, and I'll try to do a good job of letting you know when you're on the clock as well in case we run into any problems.
Nice, let's do it. Um, so I mentioned yesterday they added a $3 20 max contest that filled in like a day and a half, and with those time boxed contests where it's like everyone has the same information now, waiting to draft later isn't going to change anything. Um, I'm gonna max all those out because we're all drafting with the same information, right? It's different than Best Ball Mania where people are drafting in April and then people are drafting in August. But in like the contests that are only gonna be open a few days or a week or two, I'm just gonna go nuts in all of those.
Yeah, especially when you don't have to worry about the closing line value as much, right? Because there's just not
Yeah.
going to be any because the contest is going to be over in like 15 minutes. So, waiting for a couple of people to join this lobby here. I will say I had a lot of fun last year when you and I were doing the kind of drafts together at the same time. But I know, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn a little too much, but basically I blocked you from advancing in basically every single one of those groups.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be doing that this year. We'll just kind of alternate, and you know what? That's fine. That's probably a better way to do the show anyway.
Yeah, I don't mind getting in a couple of those battle drafts. So I just thought it was so funny going through the results. I had because we did like 11, maybe like 11 battle drafts together, and I think I advanced one. Maybe you advanced like four of them, and then I came in third or fourth in a couple more. So yeah, that was fun.
Oh my God! Any exciting plans for Cinco de Mayo, my friend? Going to be drafting some Best Ball Mania teams, I imagine.
Well, I'm getting ready for a trip. I'm actually heading overseas this week, so tomorrow probably not doing much. My buddy's having like a karaoke night. I'm still debating if I'm going to head over there after the stream. I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of super overcast in LA today. There's no sun
Mm,
shining directly on me, so it's kind of seems like a
yeah.
down day, but
Yeah, there's going to be some rain in my neck of the woods tomorrow, so it's going to be a good day to stay inside and do some best ball drafts for sure. Second pick overall, so I think we have a fast Willie in here as well. Got a pretty good chance here, Chuck, at CD Lamb, right? If CMC ends up
oh
going
yeah.
first on average, I see you have Lamb ranked ahead of him. So in terms of diversifying your portfolio, are you always going to take
Mhm.
CD at pick two, or are you going to take CMC at pick one just to make sure you get your exposure to those guys? Because basically, when you get pick one, you kind of have to take CMC. That's the only time you're going to get him most often, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Like I don't even know why I put CD Lamb ranked one because like if you don't take CMC when you get the one pick, you're just gonna not get any. And so if you're out on CMC, that's fine. I'm not out on
yeah,
CMC. It kind of reminds me of when Jonathan Taylor was going one, CMC was going two a
yeah,
couple of years ago. And I
yep.
only drafted Jonathan Taylor just so that I would have some exposure because otherwise I was taking CMC at every chance I got. But
Wasn't
here, I mean, I
even
definitely want to be over on CD.
yeah. There
Wasn't even
wasn't
a
even a
sweat.
debate for Fast Willie. He just immediately selected CMC. So all right. So what are you thinking about in the second round now? You have quite a bit to wait. We can get the draft board up here for the people to look at for sure. I like picking on well, last year I liked picking on either end because I felt like once we figured out kind of what we wanted to do with teams, what we wanted to stack, it was pretty easy to map out our targets for the rest of the draft. And I will say last year, right around like June, I think we actually ended up putting a little small video series together talking about how to attack a draft from each pick slot. We'll do the same thing again this year once we kind of go through a few more of these and hone in on I think on the strategies that we like. But once again, I will say, since you have done significantly more drafting for the 2024 season than I have at this point, what are your early thoughts on how to attack the 2 slot here with CD Lamb?
So I've mentioned it a little bit in the streams that we've done that this is just the best pick spot to me because coming back here, so we get the 23rd and 26th pick, and like I said yesterday on the stream, if you guys watched, like the second round to me is just it isn't super clear who should be in front, who should be at the back end, and so as far as like my two ideal targets, I think they would be Devonte Adams and Brandon Ayuk, but that's probably a little bit too optimistic. But otherwise, I'm mostly like I'm not taking Kyron. Like I said, I'm gonna wait and see where his ADP settles, but I'm always just gonna start three wide receivers when I have the two pick right now. So probably like Debo. I've been going Debo and Stephon Diggs
Okay.
combos with
Yeah,
CD
that's
Lamb a bit.
looking
I
at
like
the
Mike
looking at
Evans.
yep, looking at the ADP. Obviously, we'll take Ayuk if he falls. I haven't pulled a fresh copy, but you got it on the screen here. 17th, 18th, so he's got to fall like 5 picks to get to you, which isn't unheard of. Debo a little
Yeah.
more realistic. Nico, who we've talked about a little bit. DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Malik Neighbors. Those are kind of the receivers you're looking at. Jalen Waddle in this range. So definitely think grabbing 3 of these guys though and feeling really good about who your starting wide receivers are going to be is definitely a good strategy. Definitely don't hate it for sure. Um, Marvin Harrison. We've seen some pretty run of the mill first round picks here as far as ADP is concerned, even if they've kind of swapped spots around a little bit. I think
So, like
last
see, like Chris
night,
Olave going so
yeah,
early.
yeah,
Sorry,
that's
go
a
ahead.
little bit ahead of the 20th pick ADP for Olave, but that was kind of this is right around where he was. No, he was a second round pick last year too. Um, hey, we're trying to get used to these new pick slots for sure here. Jahmyr Gibbs, I would say, you mentioned wanting to go wide receiver heavy early where you are on the board because you don't really have a realistic chance at Jahmyr Gibbs with your 23rd overall pick. But I like this
Yeah.
cost for Jahmyr Gibbs overall. Like I think this is definitely a good spot to get him in this range. Saquon, I feel like this price is high. Yes, I think he's a better running back than DeAndre Swift in fantasy football, but that tush push, man, that's going to be a problem for Saquon, I think.
Well, so these are two guys I wanted to ask you about yesterday, Saquon and JT. I think I'm completely out on Saquon. I think he's like fell to the late 20s, and I maybe got him a couple times. And then
Mm-hmm.
JT, same thing. If he falls to like over here, I've taken him a couple times, but I'm having such a hard time justifying taking them over literally any of these other receivers in the range.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I like JT more than Saquon. I think just thinking about the context
Yeah.
of where the scoring is going to come for their fantasy points. Same I guess thesis that we had last year. Got to be a little concerned about Anthony Richardson getting some rushing volume that takes away from Jonathan Taylor. Didn't really see that materialize last year because of Richardson's unfortunate early end to his season, but now JT's actually even a little more expensive than he was last year because there was that contract situation issue last year. Um, Definitely feel like both are in similar situations, but we don't see as much tush push 1 yard line crap with Anthony Richardson, at least not yet. So that's good reason to be optimistic, I would say. With Jonathan Taylor on the clock, Chuck, your favorite receivers are here. Are you just going to go that direction, or are you going somewhere else?
What did I say? Debo and Stephon Diggs?
Yeah,
I think Debo's probably the clear pick here, right? I know I have Stephon ranked ahead of him, but
I like
seems
Debo ahead of
pretty,
him.
yeah.
I think, yeah,
And then
definitely think
like
that's the right move here.
And then I think Stefan and Mike Evans are my two preferences. But I don't hate,
Okay,
well, I
there
was
you
gonna say
go.
we're fast
So,
Willies
but
too.
like this is a situation where I would say Evans is appropriately priced compared to last year
Mhm.
when he was going in like the 5th round. Um, this is a tough range for the receivers. I really like Michael Pittman, even though it's a little bit of a reach. Sam
Mhm.
Laporta is a receiver tight end. You mentioned you don't mind taking. Got to make a decision here, obviously. So I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I think I'm actually just gonna take Sam Laporta here. I know I mentioned I'm always gonna start three receivers, but just Sam Laporta. We mentioned that I think the top tight ends are a little bit too undervalued, and Sam
Mhm.
Laporta feel like I think Jalen Waddle has a higher ceiling probably. DJ Moore remains to be seen with this new offense. And then Malik Neighbors, I'd rather just take the security in Sam Laporta. So
Not going to get much of a pushback from me on that, Chuck. Pretty easy to stack him with his quarterback if that's the direction you want to
Mhm.
go. If that's an option that's still on the table around like the 10th, 11th round as well. So, and got some interesting. Frankly, every player you've picked so far is pretty easy to pair the quarterback with.
Mhm.
Surprisingly, even though we expect Dallas to be one of the best offenses in the league, Dak Prescott is a pretty reasonable ADP cost right now, right around pick 82, which is kind of surprising, honestly. So that's, I think, another reason to be pretty happy. Every time you land CD Lamb, it's going to be pretty easy to get the correlation there.
Yeah, and it's like so many of these late quarterbacks feel so good. I mean, Dak, Kyler, Jordan Love, Purdy's fine. I mean, Caleb Williams has to be a value, right? Justin Herbert, all these
Mm-hmm.
guys. So late quarterback feels good this year. I mean, I get why elite quarterbacks being pushed down. I still think it's a little bit too much with these guys. Like you mentioned yesterday, CJ Stroud's probably going too high, but he has three receivers going ahead of him to pair him with, so I get it.
Just once again, feels like you're drafting all of them at their absolute ceiling, which just does not feel like that is the right move. But we'll see
Mhm.
how it shakes out for sure. Um, Two receivers, a tight end. We're advocates of zero/hero RB on this show pretty much every single time that we do it. At what point are you willing to, I guess, violate that rule? Are there any running backs other than Christian McCaffrey? He does not count that you're trying to get into your portfolio at least a little bit more, that would go against the grain of that kind of zero RB philosophy.
Like Brees Hall and Bijan, I'm okay with, but I feel like I'm still going to take Amon Ra over them every time. So,
Mhm.
and then AJ Brown like is still a top
Yeah.
elite receiver, and this kind of with the cutoff
Yeah.
for me where I'll probably always take Brees Hall and Bijan if these guys are gone.
I think
And
you have
then
it right. I feel very similarly. I loved clicking on Brees at his cost last year. This is a significantly higher cost now, but we'll
yeah,
probably force myself to do it a few times just to have the exposure because definitely has the ability to be the highest performing running back in the league. Once again, I'll mention it on this show. I did mention it on our first show. What doesn't seem to jive is this cost for Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and an extremely low cost for Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. That's another late round quarterback I think is worth considering. Even if you don't land one of those top guys, we have access to Mike Williams. We know he has spike week potential. Tyler Conklin at tight end. The Jets definitely are an offense that we can definitely find paths to stacking, even if we miss the top weapons.
back to your running back question though, like how are you feeling about like Jacobs and Derrick Henry? I think Josh Jacobs went pretty far past ADP here because he usually goes in this range.
You pick 39. Yeah, it's about 8 picks behind, 9 picks behind ADP. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about Jacobs, and that's only because of the big picture, slightly younger kind of situation at the running back position. I don't like Derrick Henry. Good situation, bad kind of on the age curve, if you will. I don't think you have to really force yourself to go running back here just yet, Chuck. So I think probably just best player available in your mind. Trey McBride
Okay.
coming off, which is a tight end that I like a lot in this range. Thankfully, you've already got that kind of down pat. I guess we're both going to join the Amari Cooper fan club last couple of streams here in third, fourth round. Definitely a solid selection, I would say. Wide receiver one with the ceiling. We saw that ceiling, a pretty big ceiling for him in the playoff weeks last year, right? That was one of the things that was very key for you advancing to week 17, I think.
Dude, that was probably the most important thing of the entire
Yeah.
season. Just Amari Cooper going off in week 16. Taking Christian Kirk here.
Okay.
I love this start with these, like with CD, Amari, Christian Kirk, Sam Laporta, then whoever in for Debo. This might be my favorite start this year. Like last year, I talked about CD, Amon Ra, Amari Cooper was probably my
Mm-hmm.
favorite start, and then DJ Moore if I
Mm-hmm.
could get it too. And that's the team that won me all the money. But like I was saying with Amari Cooper, so he went off in week 16. He was the highest owned player in week 17, and he did not play. Uh, it's so gigantic. And like he was on 7 of my 8 finals teams. So, but I'd like to think that it helped me that he didn't play because I had other players that still went off without him. Whereas maybe he would have helped another team pass me in the leaderboard or something like
No,
that.
that's probably fair given the ownership that ended up shaking out in that
Mm.
final week contest because of Amari's big game in the semis. So definitely something to be aware of. We want the ceiling games to help us get there, but then how does that kind of change what we're rooting for when we get to the finals? Like I guess the big
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind is that we would all love to be blessed to be in that situation again here in 2024, early 2025, depending on when Week 17 actually is. Schedule has not come out yet. Really robust start at wide receiver. Think you have a really good chance here now to just kind of take some swings for some home runs at running back. Can wait patiently for your quarterbacks because you have stack partners with tons of outs pretty much throughout the rest of the draft here. Very, very
Yeah.
good start. I'm happy about this team as well. Going back to the running back discussion, I think we have to be interested in Derrick Henry at a round 3 ADP in this Ravens offense. I just don't think it's going to be the Derrick Henry from the Titans heyday, if that makes sense. Lamar Jackson's still going to do his thing. I think they are going to pass at least as much as they did last year, which might be a concern for the rushing volume because the running backs weren't very exciting to own in fantasy last year due to that passing volume. But obviously, we're talking about a very different player, Derrick Henry compared to Gus Edwards, right? So,
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but Derrick Henry was not efficient last season. And
no.
it's all about volume, right? So it's just as long as he gets the carries, and so that's the question,
Derrick Henry had 280 rushes last season for the Titans, which was actually a tick down from 2022, where he had 349 carries in one less game. Yeah.
Okay.
And now he's entering his age 30 season. He's 30 years old. It feels like he's been in the league much longer than that.
Yeah.
We look at a Ravens offense from 2023. Gus Edwards had 198 rush attempts. I believe that did lead the Ravens. Lamar Jackson was second with 148. Justice Hill, the RB2, with 84. If Baltimore doesn't dramatically change their play calling because they now have Derrick Henry, Chuck, it just feels like his touch volume is absolutely going to be lower than it was with the Titans.
Yeah.
I think that's baked into the ADP cost here a little bit, but that is definitely the downside scenario case to be a little bit leery of with Derrick Henry. Now, having a player of the caliber of Derrick Henry may actually be good around the goal line. They probably will feel compelled to protect Lamar Jackson and just give Henry the rock down there. So maybe we make up for the lack of volume with some touchdown production in an efficient offense, a la like Raheem Mostert last year, where he went off with like 20 touchdowns, right? So maybe that's how Henry gets there. But I don't think the touch volume is going to be close to last year's.
Nice. And then before we get to my pick here, we talked about ETN, Pacheco, and Cook yesterday. Let's talk about Kenneth Walker and Joe Mixon. They both feel fine to me. I'm fine taking either of them if my receivers are gone at this range.
Yes, I like Walker. I like him. I have him ranked ahead of Mixon, so I would probably click him over Mixon every single time, straight up, if that was the choice I was forced to make. Mixon joining the Texans definitely has passed to those touches now that they've cleared out their backfield a little bit. I'm just not sure how I feel about Joe Mixon on the new team. It just feels like this is going to be more of a pass oriented offense. The cost is fine. So that's kind of where I'm at there. I'm not really completely blown away by Joe Mixon on the Texans. It didn't move the needle for me, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You are on the clock
I
here,
feel
so
pretty
we
much the
need
same
a
way.
running back. I don't hate David Montgomery here, right? We saw what he was doing for Detroit last year. I feel like we should expect at least similar opportunities. Zamir White now maybe the clear RB1 for the Raiders. I don't know if that's an open competition or not. This is a kind of a disastrous range for running backs, Chuck. I almost feel like unless you're passionately looking for one, it's okay to wait.
Yeah, I went with Chris Godwin. I think you took him yesterday too, but
Yep.
like I'm kind of indifferent after that. But I want Chris Godwin. I don't want to risk Best Willie taking him, and he needs a receiver. So I might just hit Jackson Smith right here.
Okay. I think we have a similar. I think I took him yesterday too. So we're having drafted pretty similar teams here, which again is fine. I like the way that we're approaching this here. And then we'll just attack the running back position when it comes back around to us in about 20 picks, right? And there'll be still decent options. Probably the range of like what pick is up next for you? Like 70? No, like 90s, I think. So probably DeAndre Swift, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard, Jalen Warren. This is a fine group, I think, to consider for running backs next.
Yeah, we'll
So
be at
95th pick
95 and
next.
98, and it's like yeah,
So
and
you have
I think
an
I mentioned
outside
this. So
chance
many of my
Pollard.
teams are super zero RB. Yeah, yeah. I would take
Pollard in this
most any of
Pollard
these guys as my
Pollard in
first
this
RB.
range.
I'd be happy with.
If Pollard's there for you, would be my favorite, I think, because I kind of making that case in
Mhm.
reverse. Pollard's going to an offense where there's a huge vacuum for touches at that position, and he's kind of the guy I would say is probably most likely to get those opportunities. With Tyjae Spears maybe seeing a slight bump in the volume he had last year because his volume wasn't terrible already, and you can get Tony Pollard at a really reasonable cost down here on, yes, a team we expect to be kind of underwhelming, but still touches the name of the game at this position. So definitely an interesting option. And then we talked yesterday. Do it again because I'm not going to assume our thousands of viewers saw yesterday's show as well. Um, Devin Singletary with the Giants, Zach Moss with the
Mhm.
Bengals are also good targets down here. And I see the ADP going down on this player. I like Nick Chubb as well. I know we're buying injury there, but definitely think this is a case of an ADP that the ceiling can absolutely outperform a cost around pick 104.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I do have like 4 ideal running backs. We'll see who's available. But I mean, if I could hit 4 running backs in a row here, with any of the
Okay.
guys I like or any of the guys you just mentioned, I'd be pretty happy with that. And then double tack quarterback, take a late tight end, take a late wide receiver flyer, then just probably 2 more running 0 RB guys.
You have a preference for a quarterback based off of the receivers you had, or you're not worried about that yet? You don't really care at this point.
I feel like I can be kind of indifferent with Deshaun Watson
Yeah.
and Baker Mayfield,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
I mean Trevor Lawrence, if he's there at 119.
Yep. Yep. So you got, like I said
Yeah,
earlier, you got tons of outs there. Even Brock Purdy, if that's the direction you want to go, if he somehow slips a little bit with Debo on your roster. So all very viable, I would say, with solid range of outcomes. I think once the big four are gone, which again to me are still Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. You're talking about guys where I think on average they're going to be pretty close between like 17, 20 fantasy points per game on average. I don't think we have to overthink the quarterback position tremendously here.
nope, nope. And we got Ken in the chat. Gents, wouldn't have missed this for the world. Appreciate you being here. Love your commentary. Throw us some, tell us something. What do you think? What are you thinking about? And Butler, Titans were down in a lot of games, leading to Derrick Henry's lower volume. Yeah, that makes sense. Had Tyjae Spears in for a lot of third downs, I imagine, too. Okay.
So here's the thing about that, right? Which is like I'm not attacking the comment because I do think it's valid, but this is the absurd thing about Derrick Henry. Yes, the volume was down compared to 2022. He still led the NFL in touches at the running back position. Like that 280 number was the most. So
It's actually insane.
yeah. But that's the volume, once again, that has to be reallocated in the backfield for the Titans, the way that they call plays. That's, I think, the better point to be aware of. Was that just because Derrick Henry's a freak of nature and they wanted to give him the ball? There's probably a lot to be said for that. But if they don't feel great about their passing attack with Will Levis and some of these receivers, maybe Pollard, Tyjae Spears soak up all those touches and are actually better buys at their ADP cost. Will Levis with Hopkins and Ridley, I mean, I don't think the ADP cost outside of I don't think the ADP cost there is very high with any of those guys. Ridley goes right, third round, right? Hopkins is obviously still getting used to these ADP numbers here. Looking for DeAndre on my sheet. Bear with me, or you could just bail me out by telling me where you got drafted. I wasn't paying attention. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, Ridley went 6th round. Hopkins went 7th in this one.
So Hopkins 81st overall, Ridley 67th. Like, yeah, I guess the point I was trying to make is the market's not high on this Titans offense as a whole. If they stick to normal play calling tendencies, the running backs are definitely good buys here at their cost. And I
Did you
obviously
say you were
stole
out
you
on
on
James
Pollard here.
Conner?
I'm not
Yeah, I'm
out
taking
on
Pollard.
Connor. I'm just
Mhm.
in on Trey Benson. Does that make sense? Like I'm not out on Connor at this
Yep.
cost.
Yep.
I just think Trey Benson could also be a good buy given the situation with there not really being anybody other than Connor to compete with for touches.
Trey Benson, it's like his ADP cost seems high, but what I was talking about yesterday with rising guys likely to rise, like this could rise. Now, do we take James Conner at almost a round of ADP value, or do I take my favorite running back, Zach Moss?
It's your team, my friend. But if it were me, I would take my favorite player.
Well, he's my favorite player because he feels like a value right now, right?
No, right? No, that's what I'm saying. If it were me, I would take the pick I prefer, regardless of cost. So, but do whatever you want. Obviously, it's your team.
Yeah, we'll do Zach Moss. I could take
Why'd you
James
do
Conner
that?
since
I'm
I'm
just
probably
kidding.
taking
Just
more
kidding.
Zach
That's fine.
Moss anyway. No, your Trey
Pollard Moss
Benson
definitely.
thesis sold me.
All right, I like it. And the market agrees that it's fairly ambiguous, right? Because I think the ADP of these two guys is
Mhm.
actually getting closer and closer together, which is another thing that we watch throughout the draft season as well. In addition to just closing line value, is how do these backfields kind of change in their ADP rankings when they're slightly more ambiguous than the clear ones, like McCaffrey's obviously the 49ers running back, right? Like there's a lot of other situations where it's not as clear.
And it's just figuring out how to attack those situations. Like I'm thinking of like the Chargers situation, maybe Pittsburgh, but I don't know how much edge there is in Najee and Jalen. Just I'm just flipping a coin basically with those two.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's fun. Denver, I think Javonte Williams is not good, so I'm hoping someone steps up behind him.
I'm just the sticker shock in general, Chuck, at wide receiver pricing. I'm talking about ADP. Like it just feels like the field has gotten much better at realizing wide receivers are worth taking over these running backs early because there's just not as many running backs going early at all anymore, which I love to see. I think the market's moving in the right direction here, but I do wonder how this is going to impact how we draft teams moving forward, not just this year, but in future seasons, if these costs continue to change like this.
Well, how much of it is just a reaction to I know it's been happening for a few seasons, so there's like somewhat of a sample size, but how much of like this season's ADP is just directly reacting to last season's ADP and how the season played out?
It's always like that. Every year, everybody reacts to last year. CeeDee Lamb was the best receiver in fantasy last year. That's why he's the number 2 overall pick, right? Like that's how those things kind of go. So we shouldn't be shocked by it, I guess. But I'm just always interested and fascinated in how I guess new strategies can be developed based off of the cost here that we can leverage. And I guess we'll work on those together, and we'll put those together, and hopefully our viewers and subscribers at Occupy can start to leverage those and improve their results this winter as well. Um, all right, let me try and find something for us to talk about. I love. Does Pharisee there, the owner drafted in the 12 hole, does he have Josh Allen?
Nope.
I okay. I was gonna say I love what he did if he does have Josh Allen. I'm not against it, even though he doesn't have Josh Allen, because you're betting on ambiguous situation there with the Bills. But that feels like a much better move if you're going for the stack, I would say. Anyway,
Well,
that's just
Josh
something I
Allen
noticed looking
owner,
at the draft board.
he did go James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, the guy that took Josh Allen.
Okay, so
We
he's got
talked
a
about we like
solid.
back running backs.
That's
Yeah,
that's
I
that's
don't know if I like
expensive
this
early
as
though.
much though.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
expensive to do. And thinking about the players around it, I feel like I would
it's hoping
almost
Singletary.
rather. Feel like I would almost rather stack Allen with some of the late receivers, maybe even a Chase Claypool. He's now in Buffalo, right? So that'll be an interesting late
Yeah.
round pick for sure.
There's this guy I follow on Twitter who's been hyping up Chase Claypool all summer. Said he had 74% and 150 big board entries, and so that guy must be through the moon. It's best possible landing spot for him, right?
One needs to hope, especially that gentleman for sure. Interested in the Gus Bus here, or are we out on him? I don't know if you're looking at running back at all. Our boy Rashid Shaheed right here as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Quarterbacks on the board for you, depending on what you want to do as well. A lot of different options.
I'll take Jared Goff. Thanks for reminding me of the quarter. I was literally only looking at Gus Edwards and Ty J, but I had Tony Pollard already, and then I was like, I could take Rashid probably with the second pick here, but no, I'm cool getting Jared Goff here. Then I can just take I don't know, Deshaun Watson later or Baker Mayfield
Yeah,
later.
no,
Be
no.
okay.
Goff Laporta, totally reasonable stack to have here. Definitely love the move for sure. And Gus has probably a good chance. Well, all of these guys, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and Kamari Vidal there all have pretty good chances to lead the Chargers in touches at the running back position, which makes them all biased at their different ADPs. And you're going to see us justify taking them every single time we take them for the same reason because of how ambiguous this is. But I'm not quibbling with that selection at all. We know Gus can handle the volume because he was seeing about 200 touches with the Ravens. It's just a matter about how it shakes out with the Chargers.
Yeah, and I've taken a few shares of Kamani Vidal already too, so
Mhm.
I want to make sure I get some of Gus
Yeah.
Edwards.
And
Um,
now we wait for round 12 to come back around to you. Are there any, as we wait for that to happen, are there any quarterbacks at this point that you're just super out on? Because I know that one of the things that we talk about is will they be playing in week 17? That's a big thing to consider.
mhm,
Um, so with that in mind, like one of the quarterbacks that I am excited about, I talked about it yesterday, Drake May, even if he doesn't get the week one nod, probably far more likely to be playing in week 17 than Jacoby Brissett in
mhm.
that quarterback room. But are there other quarterback situations like that that you've thought about that we can either avoid entirely or potentially target with like no ADPs at all and get the guy we think will be playing at the end of the year?
That's a great question because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about with Seattle. So I'm taking a lot of guys on Seattle, a lot of JSN, Tyler Lockett when I need a receiver in that range, but I'm so hesitant to click on Geno Smith. I'd almost rather take shots on Sam Howell as my third quarterback on three QB teams. Uh, I'm not doing it that much though in regular BBM. Like in Superflex, I'm probably going to take a ton of Sam Howell as my fourth QB. But what do you think about that room?
That is interesting. I don't think Seattle, they didn't really give up a tremendous amount to acquire Howell, right? Because Washington had kind of decided that they were out on him.
Mhm.
I got to think about that one more. I guess I don't have a tremendously passionate opinion about Seattle. That's not the team I was expecting you to bring up. Seattle gave up a third round pick for him, so that's as far as quarterbacks go, that's pretty cheap. Um, I don't know. They can tell us all they want. He's not there to compete with Geno for the starting job. But if the Chargers, wow, if the Seahawks are not competing for a playoff spot, how likely are they to evaluate what they have there in the young Sam Howell? So maybe that is a pretty sharp take, actually. The quarterback room that I'm kind of, I guess, worried about for somebody to still be starting at the end of the year, I would absolutely say Daniel Jones with the Giants. I don't know how good that situation is going to be. They're already talking about, moving on there. They were trying to trade up for a quarterback potentially. Drake May, Patriots just wouldn't budge. So I believe we have a decent backup there with the Giants that could easily unseat him as well. The player that I'm talking about, of course, is old friend from Seattle, Drew Lock. So Drew Lock might be an interesting target late in that quarterback room. because I'm out on Daniel Jones at cost. I'm not taking him at all.
I think I've taken him a couple times, but mostly I only when I have Malik Neighbors. Um, make my pick here, and then there's another QB. I'll see your opinion on my highest drafted QB so far. Actually,
Okay. I'm
still
excited to
on the
find out
board.
who that is. 6 receivers, a tight end, a few running backs, quarterback already. You can pretty much do anything you want.
This guy's got Stroud and
Purdy was
Purdy, so I'm gonna
good.
assume this
Okay.
guy's not taking a quarterback. I'll probably take Deshaun or Baker next.
Yeah, on the 13th
Man,
round pick. I like that.
it's
Just
like
going to
this
go with
is my favorite
Ty.
zero RB guy, but yeah, but I'm taking him every time, dude. I gotta start not taking him, but like I'm not taking Rico. Algiers fine, but I might be able to get him next time, so it's all right. Just counting on Aaron Jones not to play every game, I guess. And Ty Chandler was really good last year.
I think we're a little early for it. Maybe when you're back on the clock. I mean, you can obviously make your own decision depending on how many running backs you want to actually have. But I like Antonio Gibson in this range. He's got a pretty cheap cost. I feel like he's going to have a decent role for the Patriots this year. So that's a running back down here that I'm targeting. That isn't like one of these rookie ones that we're looking for the upside on. So Ty Chandler, Deshaun Watson, definitely good back to back picks for you if that's the direction you want to go. What is the other quarterback in this range, or that you wanted to talk about? I guess.
JJ McCarthy.
Okay, so I was going to bring him up. I'm glad you brought him up too. He's got Justin Jefferson and T.J. Hawkinson and Jordan Addison to throw to. I think that's really the only reason we have to be interested in him. We don't even have to evaluate the lack of passing volume in college compared to his peers at the top of the first round of the real draft. He's just got some of the best weapons in the league to throw to. It just does not feel like we have to worry about Sam Darnold, right? Like I think JJ
Yeah.
McCarthy definitely gets a chance. I would hope in week one, but definitely by the end of the season to show what he has in this offense.
Yeah, I just so I thought he was going to go to Minnesota, and luckily that worked out. And so I have a ton of JJ McCarthy Minnesota stacks in the big board, and then the rookie sophomore contest. I feel like that's just the biggest edge, predicting where a quarterback's going to go and pairing him up with Addison in there. And
Oof.
so McCarthy just taking him a ton. He was free in the big board though. He was going 20th round, so I wasn't giving up anything to get him, but yeah, just like you said, I think he probably starts in week 17, and that's the main thing. Having Justin Jefferson and Addison don't hurt either.
Yeah, definitely doesn't hurt to have the best pound for pound receiver to throw to, and then another receiver who would probably be a wide receiver one on at least 10 other teams in the league. So
Yeah,
definitely a great situation for JJ McCarthy to land in. I just hope he's up to the task, if that makes sense. Got a few more rounds to go here, so we're not wrapping up the show just yet, but this would definitely be a good time as we look at the board here and Chuck comes up with a plan to end the draft to remind you all that if you're not yet playing fantasy contests on underdogfantasy.com that you can sign up today with our promo code on the screen, Occupy2, and you can get a 100% deposit match on your deposit up to $100, which would give you an additional $100 for a grand total of $200 to start playing different fantasy contests here on Underdog. You and I, even though we're both light screen sickos here on the draft board, love playing on Underdog Fantasy, and we absolutely would recommend others do so. Definitely would help us out, guys, if you haven't signed up just yet, if you use our promo code as well. We appreciate you all watching, and if you want to dive in, dip the toe, wet the beak, whatever your favorite phrase is, and use our promo code, we would certainly appreciate it.
we're lucky that guy who told me to turn off light mode every time last year hasn't started watching our streams yet. I forgot.
He's rent free in my head, man. That's why I was thinking about it. I think I did do dark mode on last night's show. So when he comes back around, maybe July, August, early September, when we're doing our final shows, hopefully he'll be very happy with us for
Yeah,
evolving.
we'll be ready.
Yeah.
So 5 picks left. I have a 2, 4, 6, 1. We're taking at
Mhm.
least two more running backs, depending who they are. Might be done at two. Receiver taking at least one more, and then tight end. I'm just going to take one more. So
So
we'll see
this
here.
was the question you threw at me last night, I'll throw it back to you because I'm not sure we got your full answer anyway. Elite tight end on your roster. Are you more likely to seek floor with your backup tight end, or are you looking for a home run?
I'm. I think I'm mixing it up, and I don't know how much this actually matters. But if my wide receiver room is slightly weaker, I'm more inclined to go for a home run at tight end that can fill in my flex on some weeks.
Okay.
So in this room, because it's like, I mean, my two choices are really: do I want the floor? I think Tyler Conklin has just the best floor out of anyone here. Like, do I
Yeah.
want that or Tucker Kraft, who might be in a split? Noah Fant, who has been getting some hype, but like I don't know. And so it
Mm.
just I'll probably just go with Tyler Conklin on this one. But if I can pair maybe no, I'm not getting Njoku. Yeah, if I could pair one of these tight ends with my quarterback, I'd usually go that way too. But probably just go with Conklin here.
I think my favorite home run swing in this range is the rookie that the Washington Commanders drafted, Ben Sinnott. I know we talked about Zach Ertz the other day, but Ben Sinnott had a really, really strong pass catching role in college. He's a player I like down here. Is basically virtually free, pick 168. So that's a player I'm trying to get a little
I
bit
have
more of.
him. I should probably move him up my rankings then, because I'm never gonna take him if I keep him down here.
I think we're
Baker's still there. Kind of
second, third round
interesting.
draft capital on Sinnott. Just making sure I'm not. Yeah, drafted with the 21st pick of the second round by the Washington Commanders. Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. Definitely a player that I want to make sure I have a decent amount of in my portfolio. Just thinking about how the Commanders tend to play their starting tight end quite a bit as well. Definitely a good offense with Jaden Daniels now under center to be interested in, and a free asset virtually with no real downside risk if you take him here in the very, very last portion of the contest. Back on the clock in a second here, Chuck. Is this where we're going to go with the backup tight end, or are you going a different way?
I'm taking either Khalil Herbert or Jaleel
Mm-hmm.
McLaughlin.
Okay,
I have
I
a
like
bunch of
those.
Kamani for him too.
Yep.
I just Khalil Herbert feels like a guy that could move up 30, 40 spots if he goes to the right spot. And Jaleel McLaughlin, I know this doesn't matter as much in 2024, but he was really efficient in his rookie year.
I think we had one week
Denver's bad
in
though.
daily fantasy contest where I loved him at a cheap cost. And listen, even if we get one week where he cracks your starting lineup down here, that's worth the buy. As Glue Eater is watching the stream and takes him out from under you. So there we go.
Yeah, it's all right. I picked Khalil over him, and I'm okay
Yeah,
with that. You said you liked Antonio Gibson, right?
yeah, I did. So I'm glad to see that you were listening and decided to put him on this roster. It just feels too low. This was a range we were happy to get exposure to Ezekiel Elliott in last year, right? When we thought he was going to be the backup to Ramondre Stevenson. And Gibson's a better player, and you get him right around the same cost. So that's kind of why I like it.
And so let me ask you how you feel about this. So I have six running backs right now. Is this a room that you're comfortable going with, like not taking another running back?
Yes. We only need two of them to start. I think you got decent floor
Yeah.
with Pollard and Moss. And then hopefully out of that other four, you get somebody else that emerges and ends up kind of hitting the ceiling every once in a while for you. I think this is pretty good. In general, six running backs is kind of where I think I tap out, unless I feel like I'm truly terrible at the position. That's
Okay.
just kind of how I've evolved in my thinking about these contests. I'm hoping that the majority of the time I'm filling my flex spot with ceiling weeks from wide receivers or maybe one of my tight ends, not necessarily running backs, just because of the way that we draft now. We're not really investing a lot of early draft capital in our running backs anymore.
I will say though that if you have an elite wide receiver squad like this and you have zero RB filling your flex, that's a really, really good problem to have most of the
Oh,
time.
absolutely. I think we probably looked through
Yeah.
some of the weekly winners lineups, I guess, from 2023. Probably had maybe a lot of flex spot winners with like Kyron Williams or something like that down there, right? So absolutely a good problem to have.
So let's see. I have three more picks. one tight end, one tight end, and two receivers. Do you think
Yeah, I'm down
an
with that.
eighth
268.
receiver?
268,
Okay.
2682 is kind of a typical build, right? So I could see that. Yeah, 2673 if you want to go for a couple of tight ends. Although I think with how highly we drafted Sam Laporta, we're probably hoping that he pays off that cost. So I don't know how much sense a third tight end makes on this kind of roster, but I'm still
Mhm.
trying to allow myself to be sold, Chuck, on four tight end builds. That's something that I think is gaining steam in the analyst community at least a little bit. So maybe three tight ends, even with Laporta, is fine.
I don't know. Four tight ends seems so extreme on 18 rounds.
Mhm.
A guy I talked about last summer when we were streaming, Dan Zach, was a big proponent of it, and he, followed through. It didn't work out last year, 1 year sample size. But four tight ends, it feels better in like 20 round drafts if I'm just taking shots on four late guys that I talked about that I like Conklin, Gesicki, Kraft, and Sano, Zach Ertz, or
Mhm.
I don't know, this guy we haven't talked about at all, Jatavion Sanders. Does he have a chance to start? Is he worth anything if he does?
Don't have much of an opinion on Sanders just yet. Carolina, first pick of the fourth round of the NFL draft, an early declare out of University of Texas. Go Longhorns. Uh, I'd say he's probably worth considering because they don't really have a good tight end on that roster anymore. So he's probably the guy that has the best chance to earn some touches. He was I believe, the fourth tight end overall that was drafted behind Bowers for the Raiders, Sanat for the Commanders, who I mentioned earlier, Tip Raymond for the Arizona Cardinals. Only other tight end that went ahead of Sanders. The tight end in this round I'm kind of interested in, and I was going to bring up to you, is Jonnu Smith, who's still sitting there at the top of the board in the high flying Miami passing attack. That feels like a decent home run swing to take at tight end if you're looking for ceiling. If he ends up being the guy, we saw the volume he got last year with the Falcons, even with the great Kyle Pitts to compete with. Now Jonnu has nobody like that to compete with, at least just at the tight end position on the Dolphins, right? So kind of like his cost down here. And then let's see. Dawson Knox is always a player that I'm going to be interested in. I think that's more on the floor side of things. And then another rookie that I don't have a passionate opinion on. Maybe you do because you had more big board action than I did. But Brian specifically, Brian Jester, CEO Occupy, mentioned making sure we had a ranking in the rankings I posted in our Discord for Theo Johnson. That was like specifically a player that he asked us to rank. So I think that's another rookie we probably should be interested in with the Giants. I think it's still rumored at this point, the rumored retirement of Darren Waller looming. Maybe Theo Johnson is a player that could grow into a larger role.
I was just about to ask you about the Giants tight end room. I don't know about Theo Johnson. Daniel Bellinger was okay though, but if I go that route, I'll probably take shots on Theo based on that recommendation from Brian. But
Yeah.
I feel like I want to do it in three tight end builds rather than like. I mean, if he's a zero on this team, it doesn't matter. We have Sam Laporta, but I don't know. I was gonna
Yeah, I
take
hear you there.
Johnu if he was there. Um,
Man, he is
I
not.
mean,
How do we feel about Michael?
are you in on?
Yes, I like Gasicki. We talked about that. I think we talked about that yesterday. Your
Okay,
favorite guy, Tucker Kraft, is still here.
okay.
Um, yeah, I'm in on Gasicki. Link to Joe Burrow.
Okay.
Can't hate that here.
And he was just so bad in Miami.
I know.
Yeah, Tucker Craft, Gesicki. I don't know that I'm going to draft any Las Vegas tight ends.
You're out on
It's tough for
Bowers as
me.
well, you think?
I don't know. What was his ADP? Bowers at ADP
Mm,
90? I don't think I'll take a single share.
that is a very, very spicy take that we'll dive into on a future show because I don't have a passionate opinion either way just yet. But I definitely love to hear that you've got a passionate opinion on Raiders tight ends. I think it's just because relative to cost, there's other guys we feel better about in that range. First one that comes to mind for me, David Njoku. So I guess I can be sold on that. I think you already have sold me on that. In fact, talked about Wandale Robinson as a good, just staying with the Giants train of thought. Good buy down here. Not really a ton of consensus on who to own on the Giants other than Malik Neighbors. Um, Eighth wide receiver for you was Brendan Rice, son of the great Jerry Rice in the Chargers offense and their putrid wide receiver room. That's probably worse than the St. Louis Battlehawks wide receiver room. Shout out Battlehawks, big win today in the UFL. Just is that purely why you took Brendan Rice down here, looking for ceiling there? Might have a lot of targets in that offense.
Yeah, it's just like I talked about. I want to draft Lad McConkey, but he's going way too high for me now. I mean, maybe it's not, like maybe it's correct. Maybe it's more correct than I think it is, but it's just sticker shock seeing that. And this feels like a pretty decent bet late in drafts. I mean, they have no one. Josh Palmer's their wide receiver one. Quentin Johnston, like Brendan Rice is better
Yeah.
than Quentin Johnston, right?
Had a 30% share of the targets at USC last year. That's
Sounds like a lot.
pretty strong. Yeah, that's pretty good. So seventh round pick, seventh round draft capital, obviously means that yes, that's why his cost is super low. May not even crack anything other than the practice squad for the Chargers. That's the downside risk here. But as your eighth receiver,
Yeah.
Chuck, if he doesn't crack your starting lineup, you're probably okay with that. So that's fine. Looking for the home run.
Well, he's my seventh, so I can still take an eighth. And you mentioned Wandale. Like I still like Zay Jones, but I'm gonna wait till he signs somewhere. Hopefully, he
Mm-hmm.
signs somewhere. Kendrick Bourne.
Light the door. Are we lighting the torch here? If I could talk, I could say that right the first time.
Oh, are you pretty high on him as a dart?
I mean, who is the? I think I'm high on Michael Wilson. Michael
Okay.
Wilson with Arizona is probably my favorite
Okay.
for the wide receiver two there. But Dortch probably still retains a decent role. Mac Hollins is a receiver with the Bills. No one's really touching. That's kind of an interesting pick, I would say. We've seen him have a starting role in the NFL before. Um, it's just not a Tutu down here, kind of interesting. I don't think he really survived free agency and the draft that well, but Andre Josevich with the
Hmm.
Bengals, I think at the
Yeah.
very end of last year, that was a player everyone was talking about seeing a massive improvement in opportunities in 2024. Maybe that does materialize if we get that T Higgins trade at some point. I guess that's one thing to think about. Purely just speculating on the show here, but that was a player we liked last year. Seems like a nice lottery ticket down here.
I have a ton of him in the big board. Yeah. I don't know. Do you mind taking him when we already have Geske at tight end, or do you think it matters at all?
I mean, I don't think it necessarily matters. Do you have a preference for anybody else down in this range? DJ Chark is
No.
also now on the Chargers. Odell, you said is a zero for you on our last show. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really feel great about any of these guys down here.
Jalen Tobert probably starts, right?
For Dallas, like the
Gallup's
Cowboys,
gone. No.
CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Cavonte Turpin, Jalen Tolbert. Yeah, maybe I could see that. You don't think Martavis Bryant has anything left in the tank?
Is he
No,
in the NFL?
I'm joking. He's on the Cowboys roster.
I
I
didn't
am
know that.
joking with you, of course. There's probably a decent bet there for Tolbert. Only 36 targets last year, but out targeted Turpin, so he's probably the next most logical choice in Dallas's offense to consider. Um,
Double stack with more. Detroit could go Khalif Raymond. Josh Reynolds is gone.
Kendrick Bourne with the Patriots is probably decent. Was off to a really strong start to the season last year before he tore his ACL, I believe. So another kind of receiver
Yeah.
down here I think is okay. Noah, well, I don't know about Noah Brown with all the receivers ahead of him in Houston,
No.
but I think the guys you've kind of got queued up are probably my favorite ones that would be left. Aeneas Smith, I don't know if he's still available, rookie with the Philadelphia Eagles, probably a good candidate to compete for that wide receiver three job behind Brown and Devontae Smith.
Is he
Maybe a
any good?
decent lottery pick here. I don't. He's a rookie that the Eagles drafted. I'm telling you all that I know about him. I'm not a prospect. Okay, I've got a little bit of data for you. 30.1% opportunity share in the Texas A&M offense last season. Drafted with the 16th pick of the fifth round by the Philadelphia Eagles as a senior. That
Okay.
is what I can tell you about Aeneas Smith. Aeneas
It's
Smith
a senior.
also, he is 5'9", 190 pounds, and ran a 4.48 40 at the combine.
Yeah, I'm
So a
not
little on the shorter side.
not particularly
Maybe,
impressed.
yeah, maybe competing for some slot routes or something like that. Um,
I'm just gonna shoot for the moon with Kendrick Bourne.
I think that's probably fair down here. Could potentially be Drake May's wide receiver one, right? And you get him in the 18th round. So I love the team we put together here. I love your name of that April 30th team. Eagles, Jets, shit. We're going to have to look at that team too, just because now I want to see it.
It's terrible, man. Like this bad. I mean,
Who
this
is, you're looking for more answers than I can give you here when I say, who is Dylan Loeb? What a pick there at the end of the draft.
it's one of the 4 running backs who could be a backup for the Raiders or something.
Michael
Yeah,
Wilson,
it's
though,
fine.
I touted him a little bit. I like that. Well,
Yeah.
hey, it's funny, that could end up being your best team. That's the way these things shake out. Chuck, always a pleasure. I promised our viewers in our Discord that we would have a live interview with Mystic Dan in the second hour of the show, but unfortunately, it looks like we're only
Oh,
going to have about a 57-minute show tonight. So maybe on our next stream, we'll get to our guest finally. Uh, but that's really it for me, Chuck. I really appreciate your time tonight, and I like your team here. I think you got a good shot of advancing with it.
yeah, I'm pretty happy too. Appreciate your input. You helped shape this team, so hopefully it goes a long way. And we'll let you guys know when our next stream is. And thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Have a good one.